Can get started while we wait for more people to join in. So hello everyone. Thank you for making it to this highly awaited webinar. We are all excited to have Divya from Amazon with us. So before we jump into the session, quick word about D2C Global and the supporting industry partners. So most of you know D2C Global is a community effort started by founders, practitioners who have been selling internationally. A lot of brands aspire to go international but don't know how to successfully do it. So D2C Global's goal is that every emerging brand manufacturer with the aspiration to go global should know how to crack international markets at the back of their hand. So you can join D2C Global's WhatsApp community or follow D2C Global on LinkedIn. You would see the LinkedIn links on the chat in some time from now. So a quick intro to all the partners of this webinar series. So Amazon Propel is an accelerator designed to help early stage startups become international brands through mentorship sessions, networking connects, access to global markets. Produce, I am one of the co-founders of Produce. Produce is a global distribution accelerator that helps brands and manufacturers build large online and offline distribution globally. Porta, G Express are freight forwarding companies that help customers with cross-border shipping both via sea and air. Stelcore, Parashottam Associates, Lucria help customers with global tax solutions, overseas entity setup, product compliance, among other services. And lastly, Ping Pong is a cross-border payment solution to manage multiple virtual accounts in various currencies and withdraw funds to Indian bank accounts, receive digital FIRCs. So now, without wasting any more time, getting into the session that everyone is waiting for, allow me to introduce you to today's speaker, Divya Chaudhary, Head of New Seller Recruitment at Amazon Global Selling. So Amazon Global Selling, as most of you know, a platform to enable brands, manufacturers, sellers from India launch into multiple global markets. They've had massive success in India. With AGS, a lot of these brands, manufacturers from India have been able to access these global markets, sell in some of the most important markets, countries in the world. So we're really proud, all of us in the community are really proud of the innovation and distribution that Amazon team has enabled for thousands of these entrepreneurs and companies in the country. And Divya here, who's joined us today, heads the new seller recruitment for global selling for Amazon India. She has a pan-India team to launch Indian sellers on the global platforms, providing them with customer and category insights, helping them succeed. And she had joined Amazon Global Selling team in Jan 21 as the hardlines category lead and seen some of these brands succeed and become really large. And through that journey, played a pivotal role in shaping the category's growth. And she was previously with Bharti Airtel for over 9 years across multiple sales and marketing leadership roles in businesses like postpaid, B2B, telemedia, Airtel Money, etc. So yeah, like I was saying, the work Divya and her team has been have been doing has been a massive catalyst for the entire Indian ecosystem. So thank you so much, Divya and team, for making time for this webinar.
Thank you so much, Ben, for having me and the team over. And I think as we were sharing that, this is I think the final webinar in the series, and, all the three sellers that we heard earlier, Stillmatic, Dhwanil, California Designed, and Deepak, and Vadam, Bala, all of these three sellers have, they have been star sellers of the Amazon Global Selling Program, and, across multiple categories. So, really glad to be here as a part of this community. So, probably what we can do is, we can just start with a, small presentation, and then we can, directly jump into questions.
Cool. So just for everyone else reference, so we had received quite a few questions from most of the participants here. So we'll do this in the format of Divya running us through for about maybe 7 to 10 minutes, intro and overview of what AGS has been doing. And we'll follow that up with Q&A with most of the audience questions. And while Divya is speaking, feel free to send your new questions here on chat, and we'll take that up as the sessions, as in the Q&A session. Yeah. So yeah, over to you, Divya.
Sure. So I think, as Ben, gave very a brief overview in terms of the Amazon Global Selling Program. So this program started in 2015 and was set up with the vision to make Amazon Global Selling synonymous with exports, and how to enable Indian sellers, manufacturers, and brands go globally. With Amazon Global Selling, you get access to 200 paid Prime members and overall, 300 million customers worldwide across 15 marketplaces and 200 plus countries. And some of the biggest countries and marketplaces for Amazon is, of course, North America with United States, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, followed by Europe with UK, Germany, France, Spain, Italy, in that order, and Middle East, of course, with the high diaspora of Indian subcontinent customers, UAE becomes a critical market, and followed by Asia Pacific with Japan, Australia, and Singapore. As I mentioned earlier, we started a journey in 2015 with a handful of team members, and till date we have we've partnered with close to 1 lakh exporters, manufacturers, and brands on the global selling program. They're associated with us, selling across 30 plus product categories, the big ones being home textiles, jewelry, leather, home decor, beauty, apparel, etc., mostly in line with the export demand from India. And till last year, we had clocked close to $5 billion of cumulative export sales. And I think we are closer to $7 billion right now. So, that's a massive achievement in the, in terms of, the enablement of e-commerce exports. Moving on in terms of, this is just, and D2C brands is, one space where, we really have partnered and worked closely with multiple D2C brands and, started with them or partnered with them on their first global journey across marketplaces. And these are, some of the brands across categories. So, if you can see food and beverage, Vadam, one of the top sellers in tea category, and now entering into spices, Organic India, Sleepy Owl, Go Desi. Fashion apparel, we have Eco-Right, sustainable bags, India, Fab Ali. Beauty personal care, you have, Mama Earth, Wow, Minimalist, Sirona, across multiple, not just, skin care, body care, hair care, but also, feminine hygiene products with Sirona. Home and kitchen, we have, the bigger sellers like California Designed and Wonder Chef, Moksha Homes. So again, we have seen a very, very strong growth of startups onboarded on our platform, across marketplaces. And this is just a representative set of, few of the, startups that have really scaled up in their global selling journey. Now, as Ben mentioned in the beginning of, in terms of, that what specifically is Amazon Global Selling doing to, really enable and, empower the D2C ecosystem. So this is where, our flagship program comes in play, which is Amazon Global Selling Propel Accelerator. And the program was launched in 2021 to address the 4 problems that any D2C startup face. The first one is, absence of a structured mentoring support, because when you're setting up a brand, there are so many things in terms of, how to set up online distribution, what are the products, what are the pricing, etc., that needs to be done. And how do you really, what should be the business mentoring that you need? So I think this is where, the program not only provides mentorship from Amazon leaders, but also, from investors and founders of other D2C firms. The other big problem which a D2C startup faces is access to investors. Because as all of us know, when you are, you're creating a product, you need working capital to, really create that product and set up that distribution. So which is where, Propel comes in and, provides that access with an investment platform, with, venture capitalists, with the VC partners, funds that we have partnered with. The third bit is in terms of, that how do we really support in scaling up the business across marketplaces, which is again where, the Amazon team comes in play, wherein, our sales account managers work with you in terms of, planning which marketplaces to go after, which products, what inventory, what pricing, you can look at. And definitely last but not the least is in terms of access to, category and geography experts. So, the account managers and the sales associates typically work very closely in terms of, providing those in-depth customer insight, consumer insights, and the market insights for you to plan your, business scale up. Just a quick overview in terms of, as I said, this is the 3rd season that we have launched in March 23 this year. And just a brief overview in terms of, how have the last two seasons been. So I think the first season we started with, close to 500 applications, which, went to 1,000 in season 2, and season 3, we have seen almost, 1,200 plus applications. So as you can see, these numbers itself, themselves give us an idea of the pace at which the D2C ecosystem is scaling up. From the list of applicants, we, as a program construct, we typically, identify a cohort of select D2C startups that get, that go through an 8 to 12 week, workshop sessions and, dedicated mentoring. Earlier, the cohort size used to be 10, which moved up to 15. And this year, we're actually scaling it up further and making it as high as 15. As a part of the program construct, towards the end of the program, there are typically, 3 winners who receive an equity free grant. As I mentioned earlier, access to investors is one of the biggest, areas where, a D2C startup needs inputs in, which is where, we have partnered with 8 VC and revenue-based financing firms. You can see the names here: Sequoia, Fireside, Amazon Summer Venture Fund, Excel, ESG, as well as the revenue-based financing firms like Club Velocity. Typically, and as you can see in the last bit, right, even if you see the number of categories, the representation that we are seeing from sellers, which means that, sellers are diversifying into more categories. Earlier, we had representation from just 5 categories, which increased to 9, in season 2. And I think as we are speaking, I see this number being closer to 15 to 20. In terms of, just giving a quick snapshot in terms of, how can Amazon Global Selling equip you and, partner with you on your journey to, go global. So, we typically work with sellers and, from, 0 to 100 or 1,000, whatever that number is, in terms of, the pre-launch support, wherein, there is a dedicated sales teams who will help you, with the entire onboarding process in terms of, not just the market sizing, what are the right products that you should look at, what is the right pricing strategy that you should look at, but also an idea in terms of, enabling, 1,000 plus service provider network for the sellers to help you with the compliance, taxation, regulatory requirements basis, the marketplaces and the categories that you're operating in. We also have Amazon partner carriers, and we have the Amazon Send program under the umbrella of the Amazon Send program, where we have, not just the air shipment, but also the ocean shipment, depending on the requirement. So the end-to-end fulfillment and logistics is something which is where, Amazon supports the seller in. And, even after, the pre-launch, there is a dedicated team of account managers who work with, brands on their, scale-up journey with inputs in terms of, the listing quality. How do we optimize the listings? What are the right advertisement levers as you scale up in your journey? Starting with, let's say, sponsored products, and, as the ASIN or the SKU, matures, moving towards a more advanced levers. What are the right promotions that you can look at? What is the right inventory management that you should look at? Considering, it is an e-commerce export space, which means that, essentially your products will take more time as to you reach the destination marketplace. Equipping you with and working with you in terms of doing the profitability analysis of the portfolio, and then a complete evaluation of what are the demand and supply trends, so that you can make the right choice in terms of the right products and the right input levers to work upon to see success. Apart from this, there is access to the cross-border payment. Typically, how Amazon Global Selling Program operates in nutshell is, as a seller, you just list your products and you use one of the Amazon partner carrier or any third-party partner to send your products to the Amazon warehouse or fulfillment center in US. And from there, the entire end-to-end delivery is managed by the Amazon team. And once the customer places an order, the order gets picked, packed, and shipped from the Amazon fulfillment center. Amazon team takes care of the end delivery. And you sitting here in India, you receive that payment in your bank account in your local currency. And the biggest advantage of going global is, of course, as you see that, well, it gives you access to almost 300 million customers across these marketplaces. You also get access to, a lot of seasonality events that, work across multiple marketplaces. So how, Diwali is pretty big in India. We have Prime Day, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Ramadan. So all those events are where, depending on the category that you are, you can see spikes throughout the year. So that's one area wherein, which is where, the right inputs from the sales teams will really help you plan in terms of seeing the right the right growth numbers. Interestingly, last year, during peak, most of the sellers almost see 2x of their BAU run rates during the peak periods is typically, Prime Day or Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Moving ahead, just to give you a glimpse on, a few of the success stories that we have had so far. So, as Skillmatics, and I think, most of you may have, already attended Dhwanil's session. It's one of the largest India to US or North America sellers in the toys categories. And they started with Amazon Global Selling in 2018. And over the last few years, they have seen 100% plus YY growth across categories. They started with, card games, then they expanded into board games, DIY STEM toys, preschool, and have close to 120 SKUs now. And their annual revenue is actually close to 10 million plus, and they're even, and it's still just the starting for them. They're they have aggressive plans in terms of further scale up. So the second success story that we have is from EcoRite. EcoRite started off by Udit in Ahmedabad. It sells eco-friendly tote and crossbody bags across North America and Europe. In fact, interestingly, it was also one of the winners of the AGS Propel Accelerator Season 2, and which is where which really accelerated them on their journey as they started expanding across marketplaces and across categories. The last one, of course, is Demoksha. It is again an environmentally sustainable home decor brand. We started with its launch in North America, and it saw close to 100% growth in 2022, and have already crossed close to $2 million of annual revenues towards the end of 2022. So these are just some of the success stories across different categories, which just reinforces the belief that if the product is right, if you are tapping into the right consumer need, you are bound to succeed across global marketplaces. So I think with that, I would just like to end the session and open the floor for questions that we have.
Got it. Thanks a lot, Divya. That was helpful to understand an overview of what all AGS has been doing. So starting with a few questions that we had received from participants, starting with category, understanding categories as the first topic. So what are the dominant categories what are the categories that are dominant on India to US or India to global AGS? And what are the emerging categories now for Indian manufacturers and brands?
So I think, well, it's a pretty elaborate question, and we can go as deep as we want to in this. I'll try and give some sense of at least the top few categories that we can think of. So I think the first thing is, if you look at the demand and supply landscape, specifically from a US standpoint, the biggest categories from an export standpoint is home. And when I say home, it includes your, the entire home textile space, which is itself is close to, $17 billion of exports, and at a 17% 3 years CAGR, along with apparel at $12 billion, jewelry, luggage, which is again at, $1 billion, and consumables, specifically, grocery, beauty, again, and we have seen, homegrown brands across each of these categories. And, just to give you an, going deeper into one of these categories, for example, home is one of the largest export categories from India across, both bedding as well as bath space. And interestingly, it is also, one of the largest categories on Amazon platform. If we just look at from a 3P seller standpoint, within the hardline space. The category is growing at almost at a 3-year CAGR, and a 30% 3-year CAGR. And if we just pivot it back to what's the export strength specifically from an India standpoint, I'll just probably take an example of, from a manufacturing standpoint, cotton is where, India's strength playing. And that's why we are intrinsically, one of the top exporters or largest exporters of, home textiles or apparel, and specifically in cotton. So, from a category standpoint, when I say that, home is one of the largest categories, within home, cotton is roughly, around 30 to 35% of that category. And within that, you will see, and this is specifically from a bed sheet standpoint, because I'm just taking an example, because as I said, you can go deeper. You start with hard lines, home, then, within home, you have bedding, then, within bedding, you can have, pillowcase and sheet sets. So, sheet sets itself is, growing at 30%, and 35% of that comes in from cotton, and which is where, India's dominance plays in. So, that's just one of the examples in terms of, the demand supply landscape. And what we also need to look at is that, while someone can say that, okay, this market might be saturated, but we should always look at, what are the emerging trends in this category, because you'll see that, specifically from a sheet standpoint, we see that, the high ASP, or, the high priced, or maybe, $75 plus bed sheets are seeing a higher growth as compared to, the less than $30 sheet set. So that's one potential area where, someone can, work upon. Similarly, alternate materials like bamboo or 100% cotton, or, the premium products like, 100% Egyptian cotton, Supima cotton is something that's seeing growth. So, just, mapping the demand supply landscape, looking at the trends, looking at what are the different variations that a, customer may look for is what we should essentially look at when we, plan for a category, in terms of, okay, which category should I, start with?
Got it. So yeah, in
yeah.
this only I had a follow-up question, which
Yeah.
is that how should even within a, let's say, sub category, when like there are a lot of brands and sellers here on this call who also have launched products and now thinking about what new products, what are the categories to go into. So how have you been internally, and as your teams also go out and try to canvas a particular, let's say, sub category, what are the parameters that you use to choose, okay, this is where the opportunity is, or this is where opportunity is not there? How do you differentiate? What are the parameters that you use for this?
So I think, as you rightly said, for us, the last, the node is the browse node, which is where, you can see, which is the last level of, detailing that any product gets listed into. So we typically look at, what is the size of that, browse node, what is the growth that that browse node is seeing across price across price bands, because that's something which is critical. We also map, whether, any specific attribute is seeing. So for example, is cotton sheet in 400 thread count seeing higher traction or higher growth versus, 1000 thread count cotton sheet? So, some of those attributes. So we do that mapping at a, browse node, attribute, and, level, to really see what's the growth that's coming in, what's the size of the category, what is the price, what is the pricing that's seeing a higher growth. And also, we also look at, consumer trends in terms of, what are the searches that the consumers are doing? Is this something that you can see? Because, for example, bamboo in sheets, that's an emerging trend. So is this something that, we can work upon? Sustainable bags, which is what, Eco-Right played on, that's a trend that we can work upon. And apart from that, whenever we, and this is something that, the internal teams work very closely on before we finalize that, which category is really seeing the right potential for expansion.
Got it, got it. And some of this data that you mentioned around where are searches there, where are increase in searches, where there is growth rate, a certain is high in certain nodes. So for an external, like a brand manufacturer who doesn't, let's say, have this inside Amazon data, how do you have any suggestions on how they should assess it? What tools, methods they should use to understand this?
So I think while there are, multiple tools, and, of course, the Amazon sales team, equips sellers with the right data point. But I think the first thing you can, immediately do is that, you search on Amazon.com. You can just type anything and you can see if there are any organic searches coming in for that particular product or that particular brand that you want to, sell. Second is, you can look at the specific sub category, or, that browse node, to see, how many sellers, like just get an idea of, how many listings are there in a particular category. for the best sellers, the number of ratings that they have, that can give you, like if you were to search a bed sheet right now, you can see, probably lakhs of reviews. So that can get you at least some idea in terms of, what's the size of the category that you're looking at. The number of listings will get you and give you some idea in terms of the depth as to how many, players are already there. So I think that's some of the very, very rudimentary or, basic cuts that you
Got
should
it.
definitely look at as you start.
Got it. And as you work closely with the, let's say, Amazon Global Selling team member, they are also able to give direction or guide
That's
as
correct.
well on some of these points. Cool.
That's correct.
Cool. And a second point was roughly around different countries in the sense that how should sellers compare different countries and markets? What is the potential in different markets? How to prioritize? And second question on that is, let's say a brand has launched in the US and has decent traction. Which are the next two markets that you would recommend they should launch it? So how to compare these markets? What are the next few markets after the US if US was the first market that a brand had launched in?
Got it. So I think US is the biggest marketplace for us, with almost 80% plus business coming in from US. And I think few of the parameters that anyone should look at in terms of deciding or finalizing which marketplace should they go into. Of course, again, the similar parameters. What is the market size that we are looking at? What is the export volume from India in that particular marketplace? Considering if you are planning to get into a area wherein India already has a supply or a manufacturing or a sourcing strength. If you're creating something like a toy brand in STEM space, this parameter may not be that relevant. So market size, export volume. The third and most critical is the barriers in terms of entry. What are the compliance nuances like taxation, regulatory, VAT requirements, category requirements? For example, US has for kids category, and anything related to children, you need to have specific certifications. FDA for consumable products. So the market size, export volume, the compliance nuances is what you should typically look at, to see which marketplace will see should you start first with. And interestingly, we have an ML model internally from Amazon standpoint. So for example, if you have launched in North America, and the sellers typically have a seller central account, so there is a global product that's created, marketplace guidance, which will give you ML backed insights in terms of ASINs that you can migrate to, let's say, UK, Germany, and Japan. So it's at that level wherein you get an opportunity score on the scale of 0 to 1,000, which will tell you, okay, that if you were to launch this ASIN in UK, this is the potential that you can expect of this particular ASIN being successful in that marketplace. So I think, US is the most mature marketplace and the largest marketplace for us, which is where we can roughly start, followed by, Germany and UK being the second and third largest marketplaces. But as I mentioned earlier, UAE also sees, it's low in terms of entry barriers, lesser entry barriers, and, with a almost a 40%, diaspora from Indian subcontinent, it becomes, an easy entry. It's easier to, foray into the UAE marketplace.
Got it. Got it. This is super helpful. We have one question from Shripal just came in now. Shripal is asking, what are the benchmarks or parameters to look for before deciding to go global on Amazon? Category, revenue, number of SKUs, ASIN, or advertising budget. So what are the parameters like those that brands, sellers should consider?
So I think the first thing is, definitely, as I said, the category is the biggest thing. In terms of which category are you looking at. The second is that identifying who your customer is, and it's specifically what we typically do whenever we create any brand or create any product from an India standpoint. I think you have to you have to really do that exercise again to really identify who your customer is, why the who, why, when, and how of a know your customer is something that I typically urge every brand owner to do that again when whichever marketplace that they enter into, because the nuances are very different. Like between India and US, the consumer demands are very, very different, and the consumer operates in a very different way. So who is your consumer? Why will they be using your product? When are they using your product in their day-to-day lives, and exactly how are they using it? So that will give you confidence in terms of whether you are moving ahead with the right product in the right marketplace. So the product fitment is the first thing. with categories wherein there is a high India to US export, which is a home textiles apparel. The product acceptance is already there, so at least that inertia is that barrier will be lower as compared to probably if you're creating a product which is very niche, or creating a product from scratch. So I think that's one parameter that should be looked at. Apart from it, I think the most fundamental inputs which are critical for a seller, for any seller to be successful on Amazon, is you launch with the right coverage of ASINs. Like starting with maybe one or two ASINs is not going to help you. You should start with with a decent selection, the right quality of selection, because at times listing quality becomes extremely critical. Because, and if you see between the listing quality difference between India, the Amazon India and Amazon US, you will see a vast difference. Because so that's where the listing quality becomes important. You should consistently plan for marketing spends and continuous listing optimizations through the throughout your journey. Running the right promotions, participating in the right peak events and the seasonal events. And of course, inventory management becomes extremely critical. That how the last mile inventory management, how can you ensure that you have the sufficient requisite weeks of cover? Because unlike domestic marketplace where you can immediately replenish it, if you were to go out of stock here, you lose out on the sales potential, and it also impacts your sales rank. So I think these are few of the parameters that one should look at to become successful on Amazon.
Got it, got it. Actually, another question we had was linked to extension of what you already covered now, which is, I mean, your team would have seen so many different sellers, right, over the last 5-7 years. People, sellers who become brands who become extremely successful, and then a very large pool of brand sellers who have not managed to crack it or did not crack it. So, what have you seen as the differences between these two set of brand sellers, ones who have succeeded, ones who are not able to, or things? What are the things that did not work, or what are the differences that you see in these two cohorts?
So I think the first, which is not even a quantitative data, but I think a qualitative data point, is that if you are entering into a market assuming that you're going to just try with few products and you'll see how it goes, that may not be the right mindset. You should go and enter a market with full conviction and with your full might behind that product launch. And as I said earlier, so that's on the qualitative standpoint, and that's what will give you confidence in terms of planning the right input. So you should have enough working capital to invest in sourcing or procuring or manufacturing inventory for that new marketplace basis the demand, ensuring that the inventory is you are maintaining enough weeks of cover, you're not going out of stock, because as everyone knows that impacts the sales rank. You enter into a market with a very strong listing quality at par with some of the best sellers in those category, and planning for a very, very consistent marketing spends in line with the category insights. And this is again where Amazon team continuously keeps on giving inputs and planning for promotions, because I think it's the right mix of the right coverage and the right width of selection, the right listing quality at the time of launch, ensuring that the marketing is always on, the deals or promotions or coupons are always on, and your inventory management should be very, very, very sharp, so that you never go out of stock, or at least try not to go out of stock.
Got it. Actually, one related question that we had to this is how should one think about the PNL and investment required? So you did mention that you need to have sufficient amount of working capital, inventory, investment. Then there is like a consistent marketing spend needs to be there. I'm sure it varies from category to category, but can you maybe give 2-3 examples of for this let's say an example of a category, how much capital would they need to plan for? How long should they plan to be unprofitable versus being profitable? Do you have any examples or reference points that you can share?
So I think I can give a brief overview in terms of how we typically look at the pricing. And as I said, it varies across categories, vastly different, because even at ITK attribute level, can have a lot of difference. So probably I can try and answer it at an overall level, and we can see if there are any specific questions that may have. So I think and this true for any basic pricing exercise. The first is that On Amazon, you need to identify, what's your cost per unit. And so, overall, what are your cost and overhead expenses? What is the cost involved for manufacturing, exports, logistics from India to US or any other marketplace? Also include Amazon charges, because again, they vary across marketplaces. What are the storage charges that will be there? What are the referral fees basis the category that you will be selling your product in? What are the fulfillment charges that will be there? So once you bake in all the cost, just arrive at a cost per unit. You should also do a very strong competition analysis in terms of, first identifying who your competitors are, which you can, do via, identification of keywords. Evaluate their listings very closely to see what are the, what are the points of parity and what are the points of differentiation between your product and their product. And then evaluate their pricing trends to see, how do they increase or decrease their prices? What are the promotions? At what frequency do they, execute their promotions? So, defining your cost, doing that competition analysis. And third thing which everyone needs to bake in is the market fluctuations, which can be both on the cost as well as the demand side. There can be places wherein the raw material cost goes up and down, the freight charges, which happened in 2021, cotton prices were shooting off the roof. Freight charges almost were, I think, what, $30,000 per container as compared to, $5,000-6,000 as on date. Duties, taxes, there can be certain products which are seasonal in nature. So for example, fans, people will only buy it during summers. Christmas lights, people only buy it during, November, December. And then the last is, seasonality in terms of Amazon events, so that, you plan for the right spikes, like be it Prime Day, be it Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So I think those are, the basic fundamental principles that go in, finding out what is the right pricing that you should look at. And I think there can be multiple approaches that, sellers typically look at. And I'll give probably, just two examples, from different categories. So I think, bath and laundry, again, a very commoditized category. Typically, you will see sellers, pricing their the best selling color in, everyday at an everyday low price, because that's where, that's where they're going to make, get the maximum volume of sale. And since in these categories you need to have a long tail of different colors, you will see the same seller giving a $5 coupon or a discount on a slow moving color, so that they can get the same traction, and they're able to move out the inventory. On the other hand, you can see a toy seller, they will be charging $14.97 for a standard game. But if they have have got into a licensing partnership with, let's say, Marvel, you will see them charging a premium for a Marvel licensed game in $19.97. So it really depends on which category you're working in, operating in, and you need to be nimble about the pricing that's there, depending on the offering that you have at hand. In the first case, since it's a slow moving color, you want to liquidate it faster, move it out faster. That's why you're giving discount to customers to buy it. On the other hand, since you have that novelty of Marvel licensing, you can charge a premium. And again, that the basic points around psychological price points like 9997, ending with that. Interestingly, 97 is a way, it's a clearance markdown which has been popularized by Costco in US, and we see a lot of sellers using it. So I think those are few of the things that you can look at when you are trying to find out the right pricing. Another thing is that since most of the D2C brands sell in India, we should not just do an immediate dollar conversion and say, okay, this is where the price point should be, because that will be very, very different. So you should just always look at what are the price points of similar products in the destination marketplace, do your cost analysis, and then arrive at the final pricing.
Got it. Yeah, very, very helpful. Another topic was around consumer insights. So obviously for brands selling in India, it's easy to understand consumers from around them, interacting with them, generally understanding people's lifestyles. How should brands think about understanding user personas in other countries, markets that they haven't accessed or users they haven't interacted much with? How should they? Do you have any suggestions on how to, especially when they're trying to launch a new product, which is I mean, they are trying to research on their own and trying to sell into this market. So how should they think about understanding user personas and trying to understand whether the product will work for that market or not?
Got it. So I think, the first thing is, of course, as I said, I'll just go back to the same point. Like, you should really know your customer. So depending on, answering the four, questions: who is your customer, why are they using it, when are they using it, and how are they using it. And apart from that, I think competition mapping is something which, which will be the easiest, way for you to identify what's the right consumer persona. Go very, deeply through the reviews to really understand what are the keywords, or, what are the reviews that the consumers have given. If you haven't really started on the journey yet, but once you start on the journey and, you've registered your brand, Amazon gives you access to the brand analytics tool, wherein you can, you get information about, the search keywords, the top items which are viewed, along with, conversions. So a lot of detailed insights enabled from Amazon's end once you start your journey. But I think if you're just like pre-launch phase, I think, of course there are a lot of third-party tools which are available in market that you can use. But I think once you get started on the seller, once you get associated with the Amazon team, that's where, a lot of insights will come in. And, for your product fitment standpoint, I think, just religiously going through the Amazon platform, going back to the drawing board in terms of, identifying the consumers and, how are they using your products will be critical.
Got it. Helpful. Yeah. Now the next whole topic was around marketing. So lately, advertising costs have been increasing in the last 6, 8 months or so. CPCs have been increasing. So, what in your interaction with sellers, what do you recommend? How should they optimize their advertising, marketing, in terms of operational strategy around advertising? How should they think about this? How should they look at optimizing the marketing spend? Would you have any input suggestions there?
So I think in terms of, there are a few very basic tips that we typically give for, any seller who has started in a particular category. So again, the first principle is that, every category, the benchmarks are very different in terms of, the marketing spends that are required. And I think what's again critical is that, you can use a couple of things from Seller Central. Is, there are business reports that you can use to, identify which are the ASINs, which are getting a higher traction. You can, start by creating automatic campaigns, and after which, from Amazon standpoint, we also have, ad specialists who can, create campaigns for you when you're starting off in post-it, and, you can just enable those campaigns directly. You can, try with, tweaking with bids, or, filtering the targeting options so that, you can see how is the conversion coming in. You should at least have, probably 50 to 100 keywords in your campaigns, and always it should be a mix of generic and specific keywords. So I think these are few of the things, which you can look at from a marketing standpoint. But I think the thumb rule is that, typically whenever a new seller starts on, the journey, this should be baked in their pricing, because your advertisement cost will be higher when you start off, because you will be, you will be creating, or rather, you will be striving for space in terms of visibility on the marketplace. So this is where, your, a cost will be slightly higher in the beginning, but then it'll start to, taper and, normalize as you, move across in that ASIN's journey. And that's where you move into those advanced marketing levers, from sponsored products to, let's say, sponsored brands, sponsored display, or, off Amazon marketing. So there are multiple tools which are available, which can, really, it's like an ASIN life cycle that we really map. And again, these are the areas wherein, the Amazon team is closely plugged in terms of, guiding in terms of, what are the right benchmarks. And even while, you're doing the profitability calculations, you can get, you can get guidance in terms of what are the benchmarks that are there, so that you can plan for it in advance.
Got it. And got it. And how much time should a brand, on average, how much time should a brand, how much time should a brand assume it will take to get to a stable marketing cost, which is like standard for that category? Is it like 6 months, 9 months, 12 months?
I think 12 to 18 months should be the, should be the norm. And I think what's most critical more than marketing is that having the right inventory. Because, with new sellers, at times you'll see a lot of them struggling with, stockouts, because they'll be starting with a conservative estimate of inventory, and then, you go out of stock, then you create those shipments again, and also planning for this marketplace in advance. With a lot of sellers, you will see that, they'll scale up so fast that their production will not be able to match the demand that's coming in from the market. So I think it goes hand in hand that, all the levers should work together for you to, hit the profitability pretty quickly in the category that you're operating in.
Got it. And do brands need to do marketing outside of Amazon ecosystem, like promoting on Google, Facebook, social media content? Do brands need to do? If they need to do, at what threshold do they need to do?
So this is typically something that would come very, very late in a journey. And that's, I would say, whenever a seller starts, typically, sponsored products, brands and display is the also, one-stop solution. So typically, we haven't seen brands really, having to invest a lot into the off Amazon marketing. So I think once you start off in the journey is where, the ads team will keep on giving you guidance in terms of, when the ASIN matures.
Got it. Understood. Now, I think we in the last 2, 3 questions. And if audience, if you have more questions, anyone wants to share more questions, feel free to share it in the chat box here. So the next question that we had was on China competition. So competition from China has been intense across multiple categories. So how should India-based sellers succeed in these China strong categories? That is number one. And then second question was, what are the trends that you've seen of shift from China to India? So first is, how do they compete in categories that are already dominant from China? Second is, what categories are shifting from India to China, China to India, sorry.
Got it. So I think as, the second question really answers for itself, I think globally the marketplaces or, worldwide, everyone is moving to a China plus one strategy. Because at the end of the day, that's how, strongly we have everyone worldwide is relying on China right now. So China plus one strategy is where, India takes a pivotal, has a pivotal role in, because, that's the next destination that, all the countries are looking at. And this is, so I think to answer the first question in terms of, the competition from China is pretty intense. And I think that's why I said there are two ways, two possible ways that you can look at. The first one is, you work on the India export strength, which I said, I'll just go back to the first example, which I shared that, in sheet sets, while, cotton is close to, north of 30% of the share, microfiber, which is again a very China, China specific product, that's again has a similar share. But you'll see that, since you're playing on the export strengths from India, you will command a better pricing, because you have more pricing control on on a product which is manufactured in the home country. And so that's one way to expand your or really make your presence in the global marketplaces, which is where categories like bedding, bath, comforters, duvets, sheets, towels, kitchen linen, luggage, specifically leather luggage, that's one of the biggest strengths from India. Or the second way to go about is, which is where the D2C ecosystem mostly plays in, is that you create a unique value prop for your brand and then go global with it. Then you will see that China play doesn't really, because China typically operates in very, very commoditized categories, and also on categories which are very extremely low on pricing. So I would say either play on India's strengths, which is where you'll be able to, if you're participating in categories wherein you'll be able to have a strong control on the pricing, or go with a very strong value prop, unique value prop, so that your customers will pay for the value proposition. And because that's one area wherein China typically has not seen much success.
Got it. And are you seeing specific categories where the shift is, I mean, there are, for example, toy brands who make puzzles. The quality of fiber, cardboard that is manufactured in India today is, in the last 2, 3 years, has really improved as compared to what was there, which was only available in China, the films that go on top of it. So we're seeing certain products where manufacturing in India is evolving fast. Are you seeing such categories where categories that are growing, used to be China dominant, but are now growing in India? Are there any such categories or not?
I think I would not be fully plugged into this, but I think what I can see is that, more than a manufacturing standpoint, from a consumer standpoint, consumers are moving towards slightly more, slightly better quality products. So for example, as I give an example of, Egyptian cotton or Supima cotton, or I'll just keep on going back to the example because that's just one category that we spoke about. But if the consumer trend is moving in that direction, you are bound to succeed. I think in terms of manufacturing play, there are a lot of categories where in India inherently has a much stronger manufacturing forte as compared to China. So I think we should just be mindful of this when we are trying to, launch into any particular category. And I think once the ecosystem keeps on evolving across categories, will be in a, it'll be a much stronger play overall.
Got it. Helpful. That's helpful. One question that Anubhav from Zilli has shared is there a way to get an idea of advertising costs involved in launching the product?
So I think it fully depends on the specific category that we are looking at launching, and if you're interested about knowing about any specific specific category, I think Ria would have shared an email ID. So any specific product queries or brand queries that you may have, you can just write on that email ID so that we can respond to you individually.
Got it. Got it. The last question that we have here is in terms of road ahead, right? From Amazon Global Selling team here in India, what are some of the features, innovations that Indian sellers should expect from Amazon in the next 1 year or 1 or 2 years to help them really succeed, become successful internationally?
So I think few things that we are working upon in terms from a next 1 year horizon is that the first is in terms of seller experience becomes critical, especially when you are in the space of exports. So the biggest enabler for us is that how do we have a very strong and smooth end-to-end logistics experience across marketplaces. So while as I said, as I mentioned earlier, Send is our flagship logistics program wherein we have air and ocean freight. But how do we expand it to all marketplaces is where we'll continuously invest in onboarding more and more partners. So we have, UPS as on, for air shipment right now. We just partnered with Shipmax and Critical Log. So I think just keep on onboarding and, offering the end-to-end logistics experience from our end. That's the first thing. The second is, going way deeper into in terms of, providing the specific, as curated as possible in terms of the selection insight. So as I said, we are now looking at attribute level information to help you understand that, what are the specific attributes that you can encash on. So for example, as I said, luggage is a $1 billion export category, and the Amazon platform is almost twice of this. So, and within that, leather, which is where India's inherent strength comes in, that's almost, 15% share. So how do we, really, make inroads there? So I think we are going deeper into giving the right selection insights, the right product solutions for logistics. And the third is, we're also working on multiple, ML models, so that once you launch into one marketplace, the sellers get a curated guidance in terms of what is the cross launch that they can do. So if you're starting your journey from India, your sales associate will be guiding you specific ASINs that, okay, these are the ASINs that you should replicate in US. And once you launch in US, these are the ASINs you should launch in UK or Germany, so that we do the decision making for sellers. I think that's where we want to be in the next, about 1 year.
Got it. Super helpful. This CAT insights that you mentioned around getting the parameters, where it's like productized solution, or this is more from Amazon team members?
So this is an Amazon internal solution. It will be exposed only to Amazon teams for now.
Okay.
But this is where, so the objective is that, the sales or the account management teams will, guide the brands on, taking the right insights here.
Makes sense. Cool. Awesome, Divya. Thank you so much for taking out time and giving us so much insight. So we've come to the end of this session. So thank you so much for sharing this knowledge and helping the larger ecosystem. We learned a lot, and this will really help a lot of the brands, manufacturers, the ecosystem really succeed in these markets, and especially Amazon. So yeah, thank you so much for this, for taking our time.
Sure. Thank you so much, Ben, and thanks everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks again, everyone, for joining this special session. Goodbye and have a nice evening.
Thank you. Bye.